12 miles. I'd like to call to order the June 19th, 2023 Canal Winchester City Council public hearing to order. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Amick?
Present.
Mrs. Amos?
Here.
Mr. Buskirk?
Here.
Mr. Clark?
Here.
Mr. Milliken?
Here.
Mr. Shea?
Present.
Mr. Walker?
Here. Time in, 5:30 p.m. Purpose of the public hearing is Resolution 23-023, a resolution approving the contract for creation and operation of a joint economic development district with Violet Township. This time I'll turn it over to Development Director, Mr. Hare.
Actually, I'm going to defer to Mr. Boggs this evening on that one.
All right.
Uh-oh, it's illegal.
Yes, so the purpose of this public hearing is to fulfill a statutory requirement for the creation of the Joint Economic Development District. This council has been in discussions and in consideration for some time with the creation of this JED with Violet Township on the east side of Canal Winchester and Violet Township. So by statute, the city was required to keep copies of the petitions to create the district as well as the draft contract on file with the city clerk's office for a period of 30 days leading up to this hearing. That has occurred. This hearing is a statutory requirement, and so once it is completed, then that resolution is on your council agenda this evening for consideration and vote on adoption. So I'm happy to answer any questions. For purposes of our record, it does not appear that we have any members of the public here to speak on this matter, but I'm happy to answer any questions that any of you may have at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Boggs. Questions? Anyone?
Was there anyone that, during that 30 days that came in and there were no comments or any written or any express comments during those 30 days it sat?
None to my knowledge. It was on file with the clerk's office, so I would defer to anybody else if they know of any.
Mr. Boggs, just for those who aren't here or those who go back and read the minutes, can you do a quick synopsis of what a JED is so people understand it?
Certainly. So a JED, that stands for Joint Economic Development District, and it is a legal entity that can be created by agreement between a municipality, such as the city of Canal Winchester, and a township, such as, in our case, Violet Township. And the JED itself is a statutory device used for economic development purposes. One of the prerequisites of entering into the JED is a contract between those two, the municipality and the township, that has to include an economic development plan. And one of the tools that the JED has to fund its plan is to levy an income tax on businesses and employees in the boundaries of the district. And so in the case of the contract that's before you this evening, that income tax would be levied at the rate of 2%, which is equal to Canal Winchester's income tax. And the proceeds of that would be divided between the township and the city.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
If we were, as a municipality, to change the tax rate down, up, would that carry over to the JED?
Not automatically. So the JED, by statute, can only levy a tax that is as high as the highest rate levied by a member municipality. So if the city of Canal Winchester were to increase it to 2.25%, then the JED board would have to adopt its own resolution to go up to 2.25%. And likewise, if it were, I suppose if it were to go down, then by operation of law, let's say it was 1.75%, that the JED would not be able to collect 2% anymore. They'd have to go down to 1.75%.
Mr. Boggs, I was trying to understand Exhibit E a little bit further, and if I understand correctly, that what happens to this JED agreement if the city of Pickerington or the city of Canal Winchester is it possible that we could ever annex that property into either or the city of Pickerington or the city of Canal Winchester? Is that even a possibility? And if so, what happens to this agreement?
So during the period that property is within a JED, it cannot be annexed by the city of Canal Winchester. That would not stop a non-contracting municipality such as the city of Pickerington from accepting an annexation, but ultimately that is all within the, it's in the hands of the property owners, because the property owners have to petition for that. And annexing to a third-party city would not necessarily remove that property from the JED.
But that's not a for sure. I hear not necessarily, but I don't hear like a for sure, like, is it gonna leave if they wanna get it? Or would we still get the revenue?
Well, it would remain within the JED until that contract was amended. So perhaps that contract wouldn't be amended. It'd be a good reason for the possibility of having a JED income tax plus then an annexing city income tax on top is a good reason for the property owner not to petition to go into another city.
Well, and correct me if I'm wrong, but Reynoldsburg and Pickerington both made offers on this JED as well. Pickerington's was much lower than ours. I mean, it's 1%, but 1% is still a lot of money when you think about it.
Yeah, I don't know the details of any conversations that the township would have had with those other municipalities, but certainly where Pickerington has a lower income tax, that makes a substantial difference in the revenue potential.
And Reynoldsburg has 2.5.
2.5%, right?
Right, so they have a higher than ours.
And the Violet Township approved this at their last meeting, correct?
That is correct.
Amanda's not here tonight, but maybe one of you will know this, or somebody will know. On Rita, we are told, in this agreement, it says it's a 3% cost to do it, but I thought I heard Amanda say at a meeting one time that Rita charged us less because it cost them less to process our returns. Steve's over there nodding. Am I on the right track with that? Like,
She did mention that in a recent meeting.
I mean, are any of you familiar with that? Is it like a cost-sharing agreement where if they don't go over the 3%, they kick money back to us, or how does that work?
I am not closely familiar with the arrangement that the city has with Rita at this time.
I think her comment was that they collect the full tax for what they would charge us to do that. And then once they come up with a firm figure, they would reimburse us for anything that was the difference between the two.
Okay. Well, it felt like they weren't, like somewhere in there, they weren't charging us the full 3%. There was
Yeah,
some kind of.
That's my recollection as well.
Variable rate based upon cost of service is what it sounded like.
I know Amanda had mentioned that she'd reached out to Rita in regards to this JED, but hadn't heard back from him last week.
So it's my understanding, we would collect the 100% of the tax and then give 90% of the tax back to, or not 90, but
87%.
we keep
yeah.
13, but three of that percent goes to Rita, then 10% to us, and then 87%. So 87% goes to Violet Township. We end up with 10%, and Rita ends up with 3% in this agreement.
Right.
Oh, boy.
Any further questions?
Do we have any concept at this point of what that 10% might be the equivalent of?
The agreement that DHL made with the county is that their payroll would be no less than $2 million annually.
That's $200K. No, I'm doing it wrong. Thank you.
It's about 4,000.
Thanks for not laughing at me. Brain farts on a Monday. Thought this was a federal holiday.
I thought you guys would be close too.
Yeah, it's really going to depend on which tenant goes in there. So it's being built as speculative DHL project, so DHL doesn't have a client that they're gonna host in there at this point in time. So it really just depends on the client that they get to locate in that building they're providing services for and how many jobs will be associated. But it'll be no less than 2 million in payroll.
What do you think it'll really come out to be?
I can't venture to guess who they're gonna serve in that building. I mean, they serve a client here in Canal Winchester, and they have a very significant payroll of more than $12 million in that facility.
And it's much smaller, isn't it?
It is a smaller building than this.
Yeah, if I recall, this one's somewhere in the neighborhood of 750,000, is that about right?
And DHL's building this themselves, correct?
Yes.
What do you mean they're building it themselves? Are they, I know Excel, EXL, they're the developer, correct?
Correct. Excel is the parent company of DHL America.
Got it, thank you.
They're headquartered in Westerville.
This feels like an obvious win for us. What would be any drawback? Can anyone, I guess my peers on council, do you see a drawback to this agreement in any way, shape, or form?
No, based on conversations, we're not doing anything other than collecting the
Right,
tax and serving as
yeah.
the agent, but we're not providing roads or
Right.
anything along that line.
That's why I'm asking the question, because in my mind, it's like, oh, it's 10%, without any contribution from the city of Canal Winchester. So I don't want to say it's like easy revenue, but it's easy revenue, right? That's why I'm asking the question. It's almost so obvious to me. What am I not thinking about that might be a counter argument to signing the agreement?
I mean,
Okay.
I'll just say, I don't think it's, I don't think this, at where we are right now, at this point in time, that there's no negatives at this point in time. There was a big negative that we lost a big opportunity on this project. We were told these buildings were going to be built in Violet Township by Violet Township trustees at several different meetings. And we had an opportunity by the property owner that came to our city and wanted to annex this land into Canal Winchester. And we said, no, we don't think we want that because the political winds aren't in favor of these buildings. So we don't think we could give the proper annexation that would allow for these buildings to be built. So that's where I think we lost our way and cost ourselves millions and millions of dollars over the next, 5, 10, 15 years from now. And that's what is a shame, that we are where we are though, but it's sad. I just hope we learn from this, that in economic development, you gotta be fast on your feet, and you got to be ready, and you got to have land available, and you got to be welcoming and all that, or they're going to go the path of least resistance, and this one did, and we lost millions of dollars. So I know I sound like a broken record on that. I hate to be a Debbie Downer on this, but it is what it is, and we cost ourselves here.
Well said, Mr. Clark. Anybody else have anything to add to that? Okay. At this time, I just want to, again, recognize the fact there is no one in attendance tonight for public comments. I think we've pretty much exhausted council discussion and recommendation at this point, if everyone would agree to that. If so, I would just need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Motion made by Mr. Shea, second by Mr. Clark. Roll call.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Ms. Amick?
Yes.
Ms. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Buskirk?
Yes.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Timeout 5:45. Work session will begin at 6 PM.
should be good.
Good. I'd like to call to order the June 19th, 2023 Canal Winchester City Council Work Session. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Amick?
Present.
Mrs. Amos?
Here.
Mr. Buskirk?
Here.
Mr. Clark?
Here.
Mr. Milliken?
Here.
Mr. Shea?
Present.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Also in attendance, we have Mayor Ebert, Matt Peoples, Public Service Director, Lucas Hare, Development Director, Amanda Jackson, Finance Director, Bill Sims, and Construction Director. Mr. Sims, you're up.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. The 2023 street program is underway. The resident sidewalk program associated with that has been completed. Those walks have been installed. They're probably about 75% restored with that, and they'll be finishing up on Wednesday with the restoration of those walks. The paving contractor will be in town starting next Monday for pavement repairs. They were delayed a couple of weeks, unfortunately, with another project, but they'll be in town to work on pavement repairs, so that those roads are ready for resurfacing. Right after July 4th, they'll be in later that week with their paving crews. And then, of course, the dye addition will also be some road reconstruction on Woodsview and resurfacing of the other streets, but those won't be performed until at least mid-August, soonest, after the waterline project is complete. Speaking of the waterline project then, that is underway and proceeding pretty decently, definitely on schedule. They're primarily working on Woodsview Drive right now. They will be the remainder of this week completing the Woodsview Loop water main and then moving on to Cherokee next week. So that seems to be moving along pretty good. As we expect in older existing neighborhoods, there's always a couple interesting things that you find out that you didn't know before. So we have run across a couple smaller issues, but nothing earth-shattering or delaying. So they will be working the Dye neighborhood until mid-August and on the water lines, and then also prior to that mid-August date, they'll be working on a short piece of Groveport Road water main replacement between Washington Street and Clinton Alley. So that's kind of the phase 1 portion of that project, and then they'll be concentrating on Groveport Road and Gender Road. Three Seasons Shelter, we're right in the midst of shop drawing review. We did finally get drawings for the engineered building portion of that project, so those are have been commented on once and returned, so we're expecting some revised drawings back on that. And McGill Phase 2, EMH&T is working on the detailed design of what we call Phase 2A, the pickleball courts. We're hopeful to, we'll make that basically the first thing that occurs, and, we're on pace with the, possibility of getting that done yet this year, so, that's a good thing, so, they should have those wrapped up here pretty shortly. On the private side, the Evans Farm project is, coming into the last few weeks of site work. If you haven't been out there lately, Robinette Way had all the aggregate base installed. They've actually have some asphalt base installed as well on kind of the western 2/3 of the project. They're still working around their building B, which is the northern of the two buildings, with a lot of concrete work. Building A, they're further along with and have most of the asphalt down around that building. The utilities, the water line is past testing, and that is on currently. The sanitary sewer lift station is still not, has not been worked on as far as the components go for being installed, so there's a few weeks probably to get that completed. Storm sewer is complete for the public portions. So I think it's their intent to try to be, mostly wrapped up by mid-July on that project, so we'll see how that comes along. Sheets, they're trying to get wrapped up. We're supposed to have a CO walkthrough, I think Thursday afternoon, to take a look at, the improvements and make any final comments we might have before they're issued any kind of CO. So if you've been by there, you can see that they're pretty close to being wrapped up on that project. Let's see, Accurate Electric on Howe Parkway is under construction with their site work. I think they're maybe waiting for some of the steel for the building. And the turbo wash site next to Panera, they've started the site work there, and they're also waiting for some other construction materials before they can move on further. And we have a pre-construction meeting scheduled for Green Gate, phases 4, 6, and 7, which are the final phases for the Green Gate subdivision. We're going to be meeting this Thursday, and I probably expect to see it start out there in the next 2 weeks or so. And then right-of-way items, we've got probably 2 substantial items. One is the AT&T work for the Ashbrook subdivision. They've addressed all of our comments in the plan set, so the plan set's finalized. We're really just waiting on them to provide their bonding for the project. And then they also have some outstanding punch list items on the Westchester portion, so I'm also waiting for them to complete that before we open the next can of worms, as it would be. So that'll probably be started pretty soon. And then South Central Power, they're rebuilding some of their infrastructure from by the substation here off of Waterloo. So they're starting roughly in the Waterloo Elm Street area and going north all the way to the Bowen and Busey intersection area. So most of that is pole replacements, but there are a few new poles and a few new pedestals. A good portion of it's actually not in public right away. It's in private easements across private property. Probably the most significant portion of that is they're going to bury their lines under US 33. So they'll be boring from Conrad Drive to up behind the Speedway. So. Any questions?
No thought of them going underground with everything through town?
Well, not everything, but, typically with our new stuff, we require, the subdivisions and areas on new development, they're required to be underground. There are some situations, I think, in town that, it's a possibility. We've worked with them in some cases to bury their stuff. But it's been a couple of years, but they've inquired about the possibility of burying things on East Columbus Street, possibly. I haven't heard about it for a little while, but we did walk it and look at what it might take to do something along that line. Obviously, the cost is extremely high, but you have the advantage of you don't have near as many issues with storm-related type issues with your stuff underground, and it certainly is more aesthetically pleasing. So. I don't know. We'll see, I guess, what the future holds.
I don't know. I saw an eagle's nest today out on Bowen Road that was on top of a power line, so
Yeah.
it was a mama feeding her babies. It was pretty cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, so power lines serve their purpose, right?
yeah. You certainly have nesting platforms up there, and why not? I guess.
Hey, I do have a couple questions. You went through that real quick. Did I hear you say that right? There's a possibility that we could have pickleball courts this year?
We could get the construction project done. I mean, I would assume that, yeah, we could have them done. We've got it paired out to really just the courts. So, it certainly seems doable, the size of the project. We get the plans wrapped up. And the nice thing about that piece is it's actually located in phase 1. So, we're having to do some environmental work for phase 2 items that are actually outside that area. That's going to take a little bit longer, so we don't really have to do anything else, from that kind of standpoint for the pickleball courts.
Well, that's just really exciting because if I get asked one thing all the time, it's when are we going to get pickleball? When are we going to get pickleball? So thank you for working that aside to get it coming quickly. Second question was, I got asked was, out there at the Molto project on 33, they've got the fence up. People were asking me, is that fence going to get painted or is that just going to stay like that?
The wood fence?
Yes,
Yeah,
sir.
if you want to touch that, I think it may be stained already, possibly.
The fence on the top of the mound, or you're talking the sound wall fence?
The fence on top of the mound that looks decorative, X-style
Yeah, I
railings.
believe it's going to be painted black.
Okay, thank you. And on that same building, what, like you were talking about giving sheets of CO, on those bigger buildings, is it the same process to get them a CO, or, because they have to check all your boxes before you give it to them?
Yes, that's correct, yeah, it's the same process. You know, they'll probably want to phase that, so try to reach a CO on building A, the one closest to 33, and then building B, because that's kind of how they've been working out, so. They've certainly indicated that that's what their goal is by mid-July, is to be able to obtain that.
So just for my own clarification, does that come from you, or does that come from your department?
It comes from Luke's department through Andrew.
Okay,
Yeah, so the way that would work, because there are no tenants identified in those buildings yet, it would be basically a temporary certificate of occupancy until the tenants come in and finish the rest of the improvements there.
oh, okay, thank you.
Anything further from Mr. Sims? No? All right, thank you, Mr. Sims.
Thank you.
Do I have a motion to move old or new business up to the schedule?
So moved.
currently?
Second.
So moved by Mr. Shea, second by Mrs. Amos. Roll call, please.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mrs. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Busker?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Amos?
Yes.
Amick, I'm sorry, Amick.
All right, right now, we'll have under old or new business, Mr. Pierce, who's Director of Canal Winchester JRD.
Yeah, thanks for moving it up, appreciate it.
Sure.
Give you guys all a copy of my report. Just wanted to touch on some things that have gone on this spring and into the summer. We did have a successful youth soccer season. This season was our first season out in McGill Park. So we did kind of shoot for the moon and try to move all of our teams out there all at once. And we had to do some adapting throughout the season to make sure that, we were spreading the wear and tear on the field, that the parking was adequate for our games there. But overall, I heard nothing but positive things from the community as far as.
Can you pull that mic a little bit? Yeah, try to get it up there you go, yeah.
I heard nothing but positive feedback from the community as far as being excited to be out there, having those nice fields. I think it'll take, a few seasons to kind of hone in on exactly how they can best be utilized as far as spreading the games out, spreading the practice sites out, so that we're able to give the teams as much practice time while also being respectful of the facility and trying to make sure it stays in top-notch shape.
I'm sorry, can you check to see if that's on, please? Right up on top, there's a switch.
There we go.
Okay, thank you.
Much louder.
Better.
We also introduced the youth lacrosse back to the community after a couple years off, coming back from COVID. Our commissioner there has been very, very aggressive in trying to grow that program. We were able to start a clinic that had kindergarten through fourth graders, so I think that's the first step to try to grow it back into having teams that participate in the league format. Had 142 kids sign up for baseball this year. We had 13 teams from T-ball on up. We did have enough registered to have a pony team this year, which we were not able to have last year. That season is wrapping up with the tournaments taking place this week into next. And then the last thing for baseball for this spring, summer season is we are going to host an all-star tournament out at Hanners Park on July 8th and 9th. That's one of the things we've heard from the other communities that are visiting to play our games, from softball and baseball, as people have been very complimentary as far as the condition of the field, the quality of the park. So I think that's a testament to the city of how nicely that upkeep has taken place on there. So,
Good job, Matt and Sean and teams.
I'll let the crews know, thanks.
Softball, we participated in a new league. Again, they were very complimentary of the park as well. Our U8 team and our U12 teams each won their league championships this past weekend. U10 is participating in their tournament this weekend, so hopefully we're able to get a clean sweep across the board there. Our Dolphin swim team got started here in June, and we have 107 kids that are swimming. Our head coach returned this year, and we did add 2 new assistant coaches, Adam Moneypenny and Grace Turflinger. We actually hosted our meet this past Saturday, June 17th, and it was very successful. We are currently planning for the fall seasons. We have several registrations open at fall soccer, flag football, volleyball, fall softball, and fall baseball. So if you hear anything in the community, you encourage people to get signed up. I think one of the challenges is that we plan so far ahead that people don't realize that they're already needing to register for the fall programs during the summer months. So trying to get that word out through our newsletters and through our email and social media presence. Financially, our revenues for the year are up. The fiscal year is ending at the end of this month. Our revenue is up by 23% from last year, and our expenditures are only up by 8%. The one thing I did want to bring to the council's attention is that within the past few days, Ohio House Bill 47 made its way through the House and goes on to the Senate as far as looking to add AEDs at all public recreational facilities, whether they're indoor or outdoor. So we had looked into possibilities of adding an AED, but one of the concerns was having, a secure site for that AED. They are very costly, and they're also can be potentially dangerous. So I was out in Upper Arlington at a baseball tournament a few weeks ago and happened to see a few different options that I think would be of interest to at least look into. On the back side of the report, you can see some examples of pictures I took. It is a firefightersafe.com. It's a company out of Dayton, Ohio. I spoke with them briefly, and the services that they provide, I think, is a good option if we want to have outdoor AEDs available in our parks and public spaces. The stand that you see there, when you open it, it automatically calls 911 and will put you in touch with the dispatcher and send EMS and police to that location. There is an annual fee. They said it was around $500. I think that is because it is a cell phone type of setup, and so that's paying for the cell phone service to that site. Anytime that box is opened, it would trigger an alarm, dispatching for police and EMS, and giving you two-way communication. So I thought that was a nice option for an outdoor location that, at least provides that option. The statistics say that for every minute defibrillation is not given, your risk of not surviving it goes down 10%. So.
Excuse me, Mr. Pierce, that $500, is that per site, or is that if you have multiple sites, it's all in one?
I would believe it's per site.
It's per site.
Mm-hmm. The estimated costs that they gave were anywhere between $5,000 and $7,000 per location, and that's turnkey installation. So if that is something that the city would, request JRD to, look into further, I'm happy to do that legwork, provide more, solid costs on that. But I just wanted to bring it to everyone's attention so that, they know that that option is out there.
No, we appreciate that. I think that's duly noted, and actually I noted on your summary here that actually I handed it to Mr. Boggs and told him to look into House Bill 47 and find out what our requirements are under that. And that's what he does for us, because he's the city attorney.
Right.
So.
Mr. Pierce, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Maybe I missed it. What is the cost of the actual machine?
AEDs new range from $1,500 to $2,000 per. I don't believe that installation cost includes an AED. You can get refurbished units that have the same, lifespan for between $700 and $1,000.
And does the House Bill, whatever it was, 47, does it require that you have to have so many for so many acres of outdoor space?
I don't believe so, no.
Okay.
But just to clarify, this unit that you're showing on the back, it's 5,000 to 7,000 with install,
Correct,
including the AED.
yes.
What's the name of that company?
It's firefightersafe.com. I believe it's a side business of local firefighters.
Did you say they're out of Dayton?
Mhm.
My brother's a lieutenant there. Ask him if these are good people or not.
Right. Yeah, if you want to see them, there, the two I saw that were located, there was a wall-mounted one at Thompson Park in Upper Arlington, and then the freestanding unit there was at Reed Park. So I'm also happy to answer any other questions that you might have about JRD.
Are you enjoying being the director?
100%.
Or do you feel like it's a fulfilling position and you're being successful at what you've been tasked to do?
Yes, there's hurdles with any job. It's just trying to make the best of every situation and take every day, one day at a time.
So you're the executive director of the JRD. I believe you're under contract presently for 3 years, is that right?
3 more years.
3 more years? Wonderful. I'm happy with the work you're doing as the city council liaison on the board. Where do you see JRD going over the next 3 years?
Over the next 3 years, I think there's, one, I want to focus on continuing to offer the services that we do provide at a high level, finding ways to improve those current services, but also looking to, fill the gaps of where, there's new opportunities. When I heard the pickleball courts being a possibility yet this year, I think that would be a very, good option to get, adult and senior programming back at another option under JRD.
That's a very good point. That's an underserved population in our community. And, I can tell you as, the second youngest guy on this council, some of my other council members remind me that there are folks that are in our community that are wise and are looking for recreation and would like activities like that. So I think if we're looking for activities for folks that can do that, maybe you could tie it in with human services transportation, have like, I don't know, Walker volleyball or something like that. Something fun, right? Like just put more options for more people. You got any ideas of where you would want to go with that?
As far as other options for
like a crowd, not a traditional crowd, like you're talking about seniors and adults and things like that.
Nothing specific, but trying to find ways that there's informal recreation available to the community. Right now, everybody's schedules are so busy, especially if you have younger kids, trying to get them to their activities, that a lot of times that winds up, not focusing on time for themselves because they're too busy trying to get their kids to other activities. So if there's ways such as pickleball or other activities where it's available to the public at any time instead of having to be on a set, rigid schedule.
Well, and there's a whole section of our city residents that are retired that, we could have more opportunities for, like through the joint recreation possibly, right?
When's the last time, do you remember when's the last time we had an adult tennis?
We have an
league?
adult tennis league right now.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Oh,
There's adult
Last-
tennis.
That didn't- that
adult-
We have a singles and doubles program
oh,
going on right now.
okay,
There's
great.
adult
I
soccer.
wasn't on the thing, so I didn't,
Yeah.
that's great.
I know there's some informal kickball teams too that go down and play at Berliner. Which is, and that sounds like fun, honestly. Take you back to the play school days.
What about addressing youth programs where athletics is not at the forethought? So whether it be music or art programs for our youth, not all of our youth are into athletics. Do you see having some program for kids like that?
Yeah, arts and music are an area that we could expand. The biggest hurdle to that right now is finding instructors for those type of programs and also pairing them with an adequate space to do that instruction. So if anybody has any leads on instructors that are looking to offer their services, you can put them in touch with me and we can work to try to make that happen.
We have 7,800 square feet over here. We'd be happy to host you.
Ms. Amick, I will tell you that I've had numerous conversations with the high school, and they're going to be looking to do a theater camp in the future. So there's little bits we're trying to start branching out in. I've talked to a couple of the science LBI coaches, like, as possibilities for us to start moving towards some of the non-athletic, more academic or arts-related, so we'll get there.
Well, and hopefully, with the school being part of JRD, I mean, that would open up some facilities there to make some of those camps more feasible.
And I don't know that it's necessarily facilities for that piece, because a lot of them, like theater, can do theirs in the theater, so it's not necessarily the location. It's just what Greg was saying, that we have to find somebody who's willing to take on the challenge of hosting a camp or hosting the class. I mean, like, if I could convince Sandy Thomaschek at the high school to do a junior programming course in the summer, all night long I would. So it's finding the teachers and the people in place to do it. That's the hard part. The JRD has the license, or has the insurance, we just need the people.
So before you head towards a staffing or an instructor conversation, how have you surveyed the community to see if there's even an interest in those programs?
So that's one of the things we've talked about. We are going to put some meetings in place. Everyone's had super busy schedules, but we've said we have to get them in place. And then we just want to get out into the public and start holding informal meetings. We did it 3 years ago. We had some town hall meetings, invited people in and asked them some of the things they would want to do. I don't know that we publicized it enough, so it's one of the things we want to do a big campaign on. We just need to sit down and get it all planned out. But our intention is to have some town halls where we invite the public, where we go to some of the senior communities and go to the school when they reopen and just have these conversations.
Thank you.
Anything
Any
further?
other questions?
Thank you,
Greg, you're
Mr.
doing an
Pierce.
awesome job.
Yeah,
Thank you, Greg.
thank you
for
very
coming
much.
tonight.
All right, that brings us to a request for council action tonight. First on the docket, we have Resolution 23-023. Clerk, please read the title.
I'm sorry. A resolution approving the contract for creation and operation of a joint economic development district with Violet Township.
It'll be Mr. Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Clark. We had the public hearing on this earlier this evening. This would allow us to create the JED district with the township and partner with them specifically for the DHL parcel, which is at the southwest corner of Basil Western and Amanda Northern Road. I'll be happy to answer any questions you all have about that.
Questions, discussion? We all got it all out at the hearing. Do I have a motion to move Resolution 23-023 to full council?
So moved.
So moved by Mrs. Amick. Second?
Second.
A second by Mr. Buzzkirk. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Amick?
Yes.
Mr. Buskirk?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Amos?
Abstain.
Okay, we have ordinance 23-023. Clerk, please read the title.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor and finance director to seek financial assistance from the Safe Streets for All grant program for funding of the Gender Road Improvements Phase 6 project and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Peoples?
Thank you, Mr. Clark. The ordinance is, we've identified some funding opportunities. As you recall, Gender Road Phase 6 is about a $3 million project. We received $2 million grant from Ohio Department of Transportation through their safety program. So that leaves us a $1 million shortfall. We've been working through the process, trying to identify some funding opportunities, looking at OPWC. The timing didn't really work out with this. We did have a resident come in, Mrs. Sargent, who's been in front of council before. We've been looking at the project or the funding itself, and didn't feel that there were some eligibility requirements that we had met. Mrs. Sargent pointed out a few things, so we worked with MORPC and the EMH&T Both of us kind of gave them some ideas to go along with. Morpsey identified that that Gender Road is actually on an existing Central Ohio Transportation Safety Plan, and then as well, ODOT has done a safety action plan identifying Gender Road as a pedestrian corridor for improvement. So the Safe Streets for All program was part of the the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was recently passed by the federal government. The program is through the U.S. Department of Transportation. So identified the project, and we'd like to use that as for our funding gap. Still working through a few of the details on the project, but this ordinance would authorize us to enter into or make the application and then seek the financial assistance. We are requesting it as a emergency because the applications are due July 10th.
Any questions?
I'd like to add a comment real quick, because just wanted to thank Mr. Peoples, because he and I sat down with Mrs. Sargent and had a hour-long meeting with her talking about these issues, and she was very persuasive and diligent and really wanted to see good things happen, and I just wanted to give her a special shout out, and also Mr. Peoples for being the kind of director of Public Works that's willing to sit down and meet with the resident at a moment's notice and take time out of the schedule to do that. So I just want to say thank you to both those people today.
Mr. Peoples, what kind of time frame would the grant application, they're due July 10th, when will they go through and be adopted? I know the federal government can take forever sometimes.
It's actually pretty quick.
Oh, that's
So I agree, sometimes they can linger into, especially the way they do their fiscal years, but we've identified that the award announcements would be in December of 2023 and agreements executed within 12 months. This lines up with our Gender Road project. We need to be under construction or under contract awarded by July 1st of 2024 to meet the fiscal year for the state.
That's great.
Mr. Clark, I could be incorrect, Mr. Peoples, but I had in my notes from their webinar in April that it requires a 20% local match.
Correct.
So would that be would our $2 million that we've already received, be enough to cover our 20%?
Yes,
Okay,
yes, we've
perfect.
identified, EMHT was able to get that question answered. They worked with some representatives with Department of Transportation, and that money would go. And we're trying to figure out how that match works, whether it's using the full $2 million from ODOT or just a portion of that $2 million to make up that. We're still trying to work through some, like I said, some of the details behind that, whether there's a clause in there that it's a minimum of $2.5 million, but we're not sure how that applies. If that's the case, then if we're successful, we'd be using $2.5 million of the Safe Streets for All and only $500,000 or so from ODOT. There are some costs in there that aren't eligible with ODOT with the turn lane that we're adding as part of that. So we might have some actual local match along with that.
Could we use any of the portion of the ODOT funds for signage on the overpass there at Gender Road and 36?
There is, not for signage, there is a fence component that goes along with it, but we are looking at some options. There's a standard fence that goes along with it. We kind of identified some upgraded fence options that we would like to see rather than a standard chain link, even if it's the minimum would be a vinyl coated chain link. And then we're looking at some options for that a facade, if you will. And then the original ODOT application only has a fence on one side because on the east side of the bridge, it was where we're only having pedestrian facilities. So we're looking at the possibility of wanting to add it on the west side of the bridge as well to try to put that in there.
Great, thank you.
Anything further? No? Do I have a motion to move ordinance 23-023 to full council?
So moved.
So moved by Mrs. Amos. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Milliken. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Amick?
Yes.
Mr. Buskirk?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes. All right, brings us to adjournment. We've done old or new business unless anybody has any old or new business. We've got some time. If we
Just
wanna-
real quick,
Yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Sims, did the AED batteries ever come in for the AED devices in the community center?
They did not because they essentially stopped making them.
Oh, dear, okay.
They had an issue, a recall apparently with the batteries in those devices as well. And the demand was so overwhelming that they essentially said, well, there's no point waiting for those. We actually purchased new AEDs. So the one for the community center is now installed. I think we've added one at the pool. And then we've also added one here in the lobby of this building.
All right, perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anything else? All right, we'll reconvene at 7 o'clock.
Motion to adjourn?
Have a motion to adjourn by Mr.
Second.
Milliken, second by Mrs. Amos. Roll call, please.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes.
Mrs. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Buskirk?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
No.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Amick?
Yes.
We'll reconvene for full council at 7 o'clock.
I've always wanted to vote no.
would be.
Just trying to keep us on timeliness.
Thank you, Joe.
We have a couple cemeteries, how do you feel about the dead? What is it? So we have a couple cemeteries, how do you feel about the dead?
He knows a lot of
I'd
it.
like to call to order the June 19th, 2023 Canal Winchester City Council meeting to order. Pledge of allegiance will be led by Ms. Saban. Roll call, please.
Mrs. Amick?
Present.
Mrs. Amos?
Here.
Mr. Buskirk?
Here.
Mr. Clark?
Here.
Mr. Milliken?
Here.
Mr. Shea?
Present.
Mr. Walker?
Here.
Time in 7:01. First item, approval of minutes. Minutes 23-023, May 30th Committee of the Whole minutes. Discussion? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Walker, second by Mrs. Amos. Roll call.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Buskirk?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mrs. Amick?
Yes.
Minutes 23-024, June 5th Public Hearing Minutes. Discussion? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Motion made by Mr. Buskirk, second by Mr. Clark. Roll call.
Mr. Buskirk?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Amick?
Yes.
Mrs. Amos?
Abstain.
Minutes 23-025, June 5th Work Session Minutes. Discussion? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second?
Motion made by Mr. Shea, second by Mr. Clark. Roll call.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Amick?
Yes.
Mrs. Amos?
Abstain.
Mr. Buskirk?
Yes.
And minutes 23-026, June 5th City Council Meeting Minutes. Discussion? Hearing none, I need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Shea, second by Mr. Buskirk. Roll call.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Buskirk?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Amick?
Yes.
Mrs. Amos?
Abstain.
Next, we have communications and petitions. Communication 23-009 is the Madison Township Police Statistics for May 2023. All information is in your packet and a part of the public record, as well as communication 23-010, recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission. I'll turn this over to Mr. Hare to address.
Thank you, Mr. Milliken. The Planning and Zoning Commission has forwarded on a recommendation on a rezoning application. We need to set a public hearing for that. My recommendation would that public hearing be on August the 7th.
Any objections to that date?
We were contemplating the Rules Committee annual meeting on that date. Is that negotiable for you, Mrs. Amos, or do you want to stick to the?
No, it's fine. The other date I just said because school's starting, but we'll make it work.
Okay, thank you.
Can you explain what the,
It's a rezoning application to rezone from a PCD, Planned Commercial District, to a PUD, which is a planned unit development. It would permit up to 244 residential units to be constructed on 10 acres with 6 acres, don't quote me on these numbers, but 6 acres of commercial in front along Downey Road.
okay.
And so Planning and Zoning heard that at their last meeting with a recommendation to approve that, which was a unanimous decision by them.
So August 7th, 5:30, good for that? All right. Thank you, Mr. Hare. Public comments. Anybody wish to speak this evening? No? All right, moving right along. Reports, city officials and staff. Mayor's report, Mayor Ebert.
Thank you, Mr. Milliken. I really have nothing to add to my written report. But if you have any questions, ask them loud.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
No representation from Fairfield County Sheriff's Department this evening, so we'll go to Law Director, Mr. Boggs.
All right, thank you, Mr. Milliken. I do not have anything to report this evening, but I have been asked by Mrs. Jackson to share the following, in that the city's audit has been completed with no issues found. The auditors are asking if the city wants to have a post-audit meeting, and so that question is posed to council, whether there is a desire for a post-audit meeting. Generally, with no issues being found, the answer given is no need to meet, but throwing it out there for you to respond, and if there is a desire not to have a meeting, then there's a form we need to sign and return.
Okay. It would be my recommendation that that would not be necessary. I don't know how everybody else feels about that.
Ms. Jackson's been more than able to answer all the questions we've had. So.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I agree.
All right.
Now, Matt, do you have that form?
I do have the form.
Okay, so just one member of council will have to sign that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Boggs?
Oh, Mr. Boggs, can you share with the group the question I asked you about the JRD report and what you found, please?
Oh, yes. So HB 47 that was referenced in the JRD Executive Director's report has been introduced in the Senate. It has passed the House. The chief sponsor of it is Representative Brown of Canal Winchester. And it has had testimony, of course, in the House as it went through there. Opponent testimony was delivered by the Ohio Municipal League on the basis of it being an unfunded mandate for cities. So that is what I have found about it so far.
You answered my question, was there going to be state funding that's going to come down to help with that, but I guess not.
Oh, no.
Just make us do it.
I think the bill is specifically targeted to schools at this point in time, correct?
So the summary references schools, but the text of it does not. It refers to the controlling authority of a recreational facility, and so that can be a school, but it can also be a city or township or a recreation district.
I do know most schools already have AEDs in every facility, so it's probably why there's not as much funding, because most of them already have it in place. We'll see what comes out.
Thank you, Mr. Boggs. Finance Director, Ms. Jackson, isn't with us this evening. We'll move on to Public Service Director, Mr. Peoples.
Thank you, Mr. Milliken. The only thing I want to highlight from my written report is the Winchester Boulevard reconfiguration. As I said in the work session, we were going back and forth on the Gender Road Phase 6 project for an OPWC application. Since we identified that other funding through Safe Streets for All, we are looking to submit an application for OPWC funding for the Winchester Boulevard project. We did have EMHT perform a mock scoring on that. It did score rather well on that. We have a couple points we may be able to still get through some economic development or cost sharing. But it looks like it is a viable project to get some funding. So still working through that. We'll have legislation similar to the Safe Streets for All tonight, authorizing the application. So that and go through a public meeting on the project as well, try to get some input. Oh, and as far as the Safe Streets for All program, we'll be doing some letters of support. Send that around if you all want to sign that and get it back to us to try to get drum up some more support for the project.
I have just one quick question. Matt, do you have a guess? I know this is difficult. Like, do they anticipate how many people are going to apply for that and how much money is available for that?
I believe it was $1 billion was available for the state Safe Streets for All program. This is the second year that they've done this. Last year, they had money left on the table, so they're definitely drumming up some support for this. I was not aware of this project or this funding last year, but Morpsey has actually highlighted in one of their annual or weekly. I think they do a grant identification meetings, and
So you think it'll be more competitive this round with more people knowing about it?
yeah, but we are going, I think what helps us out is we're going for an actual construction grant rather than, or an implementation grant rather than a planning grant. A lot of places, I think the planning grant was utilized a lot in the previous cycle. So being able to have a project ready to go that is eligible for this type of funding would help us out with that.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Any other questions for Mr. Peoples? Thank you, Mr. Peoples. Development Director, Mr. Hare.
Thank you, Mr. Milliken. Thank you to the council members who were able to join us on Friday. We did a tour to some library branches in the Columbus Metropolitan Library System. So we went to Reynoldsburg branch, which is under construction, to the Gahanna branch, which is newly opened and was rebuilt. And then we stopped at the Whitehall branch as well to kind of review what the library hopes to accomplish on the site that they purchased on Groveport Road. They were asking for feedback on, local priorities for that library. So thank you to all who participated in that. We had some folks from the Planning and Zoning Commission that participated as well. Their goal is to have their site plans and architecture determined by late this year, and then be prepared to start construction in the spring or early summer of next year is kind of their goal right now. But they're at the very beginning of the design phase for that project. So we'll be working closely with them over the next few months to kind of make sure that, it meets our requirements, but it also meets the library's requirements as well. They're looking at a 30,000 square foot branch. They're currently in 4,500 square feet, so it's quite the upgrade from what they're operating in currently. Also, some of you may have seen that the Sweet Harmony Canal has started. That's at 30 Liberty Street, the new bar concept that they've started there. So construction has started on the interior of that facility. There's also a sign up on the building now. And so I'm sure you'll start hearing about that, but wanted to make you all aware that they did start construction there last week. I'd be happy to answer any other questions you all might have.
Mr. Hare, with the Sweet Harmony, is it my understanding that that's going to be kind of a venue place where other vendors will be able to come in, or restaurateurs or something?
It'll
What exactly the layout?
It'll be operated as a bar.
Okay.
And they will have, entertainment on certain evenings as well, scheduled in there. But it'll also be a facility that will have places you can rent out. So they have meeting rooms, things like that you can rent out as well.
Do they have a speculative open date at the moment?
I'm not aware of exactly when
Okay.
they have pretty extensive renovations they need to do there. They're putting, a fire suppression system in the building. They have a lot of drain line work, their restrooms, so there's a lot of work to do.
Okay.
Do we have a food truck policy, or can anyone who, if they hire a food truck to come to that facility, is it okay with us? We don't have any guidelines
We
or
have a
policy?
special event permit that's required if you have a food truck.
Okay,
If it's interior to the building, then that wouldn't,
right.
there wouldn't be any requirements for permitting for that.
Thank you, Mr. Hare. On to ordinances. We don't have any third readings this evening, so second readings, we have ordinance 23-021. If you could read that, please, clerk.
Oh, wait.
Where's our
You skipped
resolution?
our
Yeah, you
resolution.
missed the resolution.
Oh, I skipped over. My apologies. Resolution 23-023. If you could read that, please.
A resolution approving the contract for creation and operation of a joint economic development district with Violet Township.
Discussion? Sponsor is Mrs. Amick.
I move to adopt Resolution 23-023.
Second?
Motion was made by Mrs. Amick, second by Mr. Buskirk. Roll call.
Mrs. Amick?
Yes.
Mr. Buskirk?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Amos?
Abstain.
Now we'll go on to ordinances. Second reading on ordinance 23-021. Clerk, if you'd read that, please.
An ordinance approving and adopting the 2024 tax budget.
Discussion? Sponsors, Mr. Shea.
Second reading only.
Ordinance 23-022. Clerk, if you'd read that, please.
An ordinance to amend the 2023 appropriation ordinance number 22-041, amendment number 4.
Discussion? Sponsors, Mrs. Amick.
Second reading only?
And our first reading this evening, ordinance 23-023. Clerk, if you'd read that.
An ordinance authorizing the mayor and finance director to seek financial assistance from the Safe Streets for All grant program for funding of the Gender Road Improvements Phase 6 project and declaring an emergency.
Discussion? Sponsors, Mrs. Amos.
I will motion to waive the second and third reading and declare an emergency.
Second?
Motion made by Mrs. Amos to waive second and third reading, second by Mr. Clark. Roll call.
Mrs. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Amick?
Yes.
Mr. Buskirk?
Yes.
Motion to approve ordinance 23-023.
Second?
Motion made by Mrs. Amos, second by Mr. Clark. Roll call.
Mrs. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mrs. Amick?
Yes.
Mr. Buskirk?
Yes.
Okay, next we have council reports. We will be on council recess, so no meeting Monday, July 3rd. Our next work session and council meeting will be Monday, July 17th at 6 p.m. And we have a committee of the whole scheduled for Monday, July 31st at 6 p.m. And next we have CW Human Services, Mr. Walker.
Okay, from Director of Human Services, Aletha Mullins, here are the updates for tonight's council meeting. We're hosting a workshop on June 21st from 6 o'clock to 7 p.m. on the 10 warning signs of Alzheimer's. All are welcome. Location is 80 Covenant Way, and Brock Walk was a success, bringing in 19,830 items for the community food pantry. And then Loose Rail is giving 10% of all sales on Tuesday in the month of June. And they'd like to invite everyone to come out and support CW Human Services.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. CWICC, Mrs. Amick.
I have nothing new to report since my last report. Our next meeting is August 30th.
Thank you. CWJRD, Mrs. Amos and Mr. Shea.
Our meeting got unfortunately moved last week due to attendance, so we are meeting this Thursday at Town Hall at 7 p.m. And obviously Greg gave our report in the work session. Mr. Shea? Anything? We're good.
All right. Destination Canal Winchester is the chair. We have another Thirsty Thursday coming up this Thursday at Stradley Park from 6 to 9. There will be McClann's Celtic Rock Band performing, as well as the Grilled Cheese Gangsters food truck and Weldon's food trucks. Be sure to check out the community calendar on destination.org for this event and other happenings around Canal Winchester. That would also include the farmers market coming up Saturday and every Saturday from 9 a.m. to noon at the Historical Complex. There's also the Canal Winchester Farmers Market Facebook page that you can check for more information. We are getting closer to Blues and Ribs Fest, just over a month away, July 28th and 29th. Currently looking for volunteers for the information booth and green room. If you're interested in volunteering, please contact Karen Stiles at info@destinationcw.org. That's all for destination. Let's do CW Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Buskirk.
The Chambers continues to reach out to new members, potential members each week, trying to increase their membership. Recent events, they recently held at the Community Center a networking and hiring night. That was on Thursday, June 15th. And upcoming events, how to market your business digitally. That's going to be Wednesday, June 21st. from 11 to 1 here at the community center. And then their next event is Brews and Blankets on June 22nd from 4 to 7:30. That will be at Brewdog for a networking happy hour with a twist. The chamber and a networking throughout Central Ohio is coming together to see how many of the fleece blankets they can make in one afternoon for foster families and youth. And the next meeting, I don't have the date for that right now.
Thank you, Mr. Buskirk. Old or new business?
Yeah, I'd like to bring something up, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
Going back to the audits, the audit we just went through and what's coming up for the future, I'd just like to point out that for the last six audits, whatever it's been, since Amanda has been at the helm of the finance director, she has received the highest possible achievement for her audits every time. And it's not just about numbers. It's not about adding and subtracting and multiplying and dividing. It's about procedures she has put in place, not only for her, but for all the staff to follow and for her staff to follow. And she has done a fantastic job at that. And again, she is the city. She gets the credit. Well, the city kind of gets the credit, but she deserves the credit for putting everything in place to make that happen and make us financially stable as we are today.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Just wanted to point that out.
Yep. Any other old or new business, Mr. Shea?
Did we figure out that fee waiver for the Eagle Scout?
So that could be done by legislation. There is a fee schedule that is adopted by ordinance. My understanding from talking to Mr. Hare between work session and this session is that there are exceptions that are already laid out in the fee schedule ordinance, but that is not, this does not fall into one of those exceptions, so new legislation would be needed to waive that or add it to the list of exceptions.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Is that something that you'd want to see at the July meeting? Or have further discussion? Is everybody in the know on this?
The kiddo that came in front of us. So I guess my question would be, he can't start unless they pay for the permit, correct?
What's the cost of the permit?
$495.
My opinion would be, let's just bring it forward and we vote on it. Right, that's the step forward, right?
Correct.
I say, I don't want to just nip it in the bud and say, no, we're not going to have a vote on it. I'd say, let's bring it forward, and he deserves at least our vote, so.
How would you structure this particular type of exemption legally, Mr. Boggs?
I'd have to give it some thought, but probably, you know, in terms of a community project, not-for-profit, something maybe even that if council was comfortable allowing it to be something that's an application to, you know, the development director to be approved by the mayor if it meets these criteria, then it wouldn't have to come back before council if this situation should reoccur.
So in this case, would it be beneficial if we did a transfer of funds from bed tax, because this is for a
We're looking at waiving it.
concession, I understand that, but I mean, he's saying we need to have legislation in place to waive it. So my question is, because we don't want to hold this kiddo up, can we look at the legislation, but is it in our best interest that he's not held up? Should we take it from bed tax funds for the $495, just reappropriate funds, in this case only, so that we can expedite it, because it is a travel and tourism, as it's a away station for visiting teams.
Well, for one, I wouldn't want to make any commitments or representations to you about the bed tax fund and what's available and what's not encumbered at this moment.
We have $495, I know that.
Well, I don't know. We probably do, but I don't want to make that representation without Mrs. Jackson here. You know, to do that, that would require an appropriation ordinance, which itself is doable, but we could do that just as easily at the July, whatever day that is, July 17th meeting, just as we could do the fee waiver provision at the July 17th meeting. Have it by suspension of rules and adopt by emergency, and it'd be done.
Yeah, I think my only concern was just holding him up. That was my biggest concern. Because that's over a month that we're asking him to wait if he's already scheduled this project.
Well, what has he done since then? I mean, I know he came in to talk to us, but what has that young man done since then?
So just for the record, I will be abstaining from the vote because I have been talking to this kid as mentoring him on some of this stuff. But just to kind of give you an update, so he has,
No, what has he done? Like, has he gone to the city and said, hey,
he's already got he's been approved. He's to the part where he can receive a permit. And he has reached out and received quite a bit of funding. He also has concrete donated and electric work donated. So he is getting close to the part where he can roll out.
I'll give him $100 for his permit.
Yeah, so
I'll donate it to him out of my own pocket, like, I
Right.
mean.
has he actually solicited either companies or individuals for funding?
Yes.
Okay. And of the 495 total cost, has he actually raised anything towards the permit cost?
Not towards the permit, because he had approached us and was, just based on conversations here, kind of got the inclination that we were going to be able to waive it. So he did not include that in his proposals that he's requested
Sounds
funding
like
for.
we can waive it, it's just not on the timing that he wants it done in.
I mean, if we can't, we just go back to him and tell him it has to be on this next meeting. It is what it is. I'm just,
I guess I'd like to know, I always come at these, what are we doing? I mean, this is a very worthwhile project, as are a lot of them, but I'd like to, how many nonprofit and other groups like this come before the city and ask, and pay to have a permit that they have had to pay to put in this or that or whatever? If it's not a lot, then I don't have a big problem. If it's a lot, are we opening up ourselves to now every nonprofit or every group that says they want to do a project and they've got a fee to pay, that we have to, we're going to look pretty stupid if we don't waive one and we do the other type of thing? Is it?
The most frequent nonprofit users would be every church in the city, and then the schools are typically getting permits for everything they do. So whether it's, amending something with their fire alarms or changing something in their buildings, but I would say probably the most frequent are the churches, because we have, approximately 15 churches in town.
Mm-hmm.
typically, have any of them asked for a fee reduction or fee waiver?
No. The schools frequently do.
But what if they start,
But they
they
don't
see
get
this
it.
and.
We have in the past waived portions of their fees.
Can you unilaterally over there at
The fee ordinance allows the mayor to have the ability to waive fees when the project exceeds over $100,000 of investment, or the building has been vacant for more than 1 year, as an incentive to get them to update buildings. So that's been in the fee schedule for quite a long time. So that was put in to basically as an incentive for economic development, because it allows a smaller business that's making an investment into a building to get an incentive as well.
What's the will of council?
I'm with Mr. Shea, I'll donate to his cause.
Okay. So I guess, based on those two voices, I'm hearing that we'll just tell the kid to work on fundraising, I guess, right?
Okay.
I will work with him to make sure that he gets the funds that he needs.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll be on board with that.
Yeah.
I'll help out.
How many Eagle Scout projects a year do we get?
On average so you only have, you have one primary troop in Canal Winchester, that's 103. And on average, you get 3 to 4, maybe a year. And that's on a really good year. Most years, it's 1 to 2.
Well, and I know what an accomplishment that Eagle Scout program is, and I think as a municipality, we should do everything to support it. I'm just wondering if there's, I would say like, that would be, if you want to limit it to Eagle Scout exemptions, that would be very narrow and would kick you off or Eagle Scout projects, right? Like, that would be very narrow and limit you to not getting sucked into the nonprofits asking for help.
It would be very narrow. It might, in a sense, be too narrow if it would have the effect of, tending to favor one sort of protected group over another.
So is it cleaner just to make an emergency motion to add a $490 appropriation ordinance this evening to, out of the bed tax to cover the cost of this and not have to change it? And then it's done?
So that would be an appropriation to reimburse him, or to pay him to pay
To pay his fee?
I don't know if I would call that, it would certainly be a quicker way of getting it done. I don't know if I'd call it cleaner, because I don't know if that would solve the problem that you'd have with any other, worthy cause coming in and asking the same thing. And I suspect, without going back and looking, I suspect that that's not how we've approached it with the schools, who are the only other people, to my knowledge, that have gotten some limited waivers.
When it sounds like that was included in the ordinance that allowed you to do that
Because of the size.
because of the abdominal.
Right, so we waived a portion of the fees for like they just did the bleachers and the press box and all that exceeded $100,000, so we had the ability the mayor had the ability to waive some of those costs.
Sounds like there's enough members of council willing to pitch in to cover his fees.
I think so.
Go with
And
that.
and then he can walk in, if we get the money in the next few days, he can walk in the next day, he's got the money and apply for it, right? And he wouldn't have to wait
Yeah, I
on
mean, we're
any
ready to issue the permit at this point, that's why we have the cost of what the fees are,
Yeah.
because we're prepared to issue it.
I think it'd be quicker
Paid and
that
picked
way.
up.
Okay.
I'm good.
Yeah. Lastly, for older new business, so we do have committee of the whole scheduled for Monday, July 31st. Do we have agenda items that we want to schedule for that meeting?
Not to my knowledge.
No?
We've been able to wrap up a lot of them this year.
We've not had any from a staff standpoint that I know of.
Mr. Walker, were you about to say something?
No, I just have some more old business.
Okay. Okay, so if there's nothing for us to discuss for that meeting, everybody okay with canceling that meeting then?
Yes.
Okay. So we'll cancel committee of the whole for Monday, July 31st. And then, Mr. Walker, any other older new business?
Yes, at the last meeting, I don't believe it's on here, but I was asking President Milliken if we could keep the sound system possibly in the Dora or downtown area on old business, and the banners for the, whether it's a hometown hero or whatever it would be called, the veterans, and was reading, I don't know if it's correct or not, I believe it is, on the city's Facebook. I'm pretty sure that's where I was, and there's been a little bit of talk about there's a, after being vetted, that there is an $85 fee for that veteran, unless I'm reading that incorrectly. And I was just, if that is the case, I was hoping that there might be another way of that $85 for that veteran in the military for that to be paid other than out of their pocket, as it would be, in my thoughts, a lot more important. They've already paid back, they're paying now their time, and to me, it would be a reward, us not acknowledging as a city that veteran, that person that's serving in the military, and honoring that person by it being paid other than out of their pocket. Any other comments, please?
Maybe just from a background, the $85 is what the banner company charges. These are all individually identified banners with names of the individual and pictures, as well as the branch that they're serving in. So that's what the banner company had just charged us. The city's covering the shipping fee, but it was a straight 85 for that. So we just modeled our program off of some of the other communities that do this as well. So that's how we came up with.
And the city, I assume, absorbs the cost of hanging them?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we hang them, we'll put them, give them back, or coordinate the return back to of the banners to the veterans or their families after the Veterans Day timeframe. So it's actually their banner if they choose to give it back to us. Next year, if it's in good condition, we'll continue this program and put it back up for them as well, once they do buy it. So it does go up as long as it's in good condition.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering if that's what we had done, is seen what the other communities were doing and how they went about it, and having that funded, or if it was funded by the veteran.
How many banners can we put up?
So what we've done this year is set up every other pole has a American flag on it, and every other pole has a basket. So the ones with the American flag would have a banner on it. We're going to start on South High Street first, and then, I mean, how many poles we have, I don't have a count of how many are in the downtown area. I would say we would easily be able to have 75, and I'm just trying to go off the top of my head on some of these, some of the lights in the area, and that's just the ones we have the flags on. So we just kind of focus on the core downtown for the flags and baskets. The way we did set it up, because our pole, our banner arms are very narrow. So if you think about the old CW banners that we had on there, I think they're only like 11.5 inches. So the $85 is actually two banners, and it's both two-sided. So they'll have a picture and then their name on one side of the pole, name on the other, and then same thing on the reverse.
I mean, I think it would bring, having banners, that's a downtown, you're doing downtown beautification and downtown, recognizing obviously a veteran and a hero. I think families would come down to see it, might go into Shades, have a sandwich or something and things like that. I think it could be an attraction to bring people downtown. I think the bed tax could be a use for this. You're looking at if you did 75, you're looking at $4,960. I mean, I kind of agree with Mr. Walker. These ladies and guys have put in a lot for our country and for our freedoms that I kind of hate, hey, we're going to honor you, but we're going to make you pay type of thing. I don't know. That's my thoughts.
I would agree with that as well.
I concur.
Okay.
I will say, Mr. Walker, with Jordan being out this week, that's probably why these didn't make it. Did you want to leave veterans banners on old or new business?
Yes, I mean, until I guess it's already out there, it's already being taken care
Yeah,
of.
I guess The program is live right now, and there's a deadline on it. I'm sorry, I think it's the end of July, if I'm not mistaken. But we need to get this figured out if we're gonna change it midstream. And then also, in my opinion, we need to put a cap on this. If it's the first 75 or whatever it is, and if it's from council, because if not, I mean, we're gonna have more banners than poles that we need to think about. So, that is something that we need to do if we cap it at 50. Like I said, that 75 is off the top of my head. I don't have that count. I could try to figure out the zones and how many lights we have.
First come, first serve? Is that fair?
Absolutely. I agree with Matt's opinion about capping it too.
Yeah.
And I think we should publicize the cap, hey, the first X are going to be covered by the city, because those are how many pole spots we have, or however you want to do it.
That's good.
Yeah. So what do we need, Thad? Do we need a resolution to, or can we do this tonight? Can we make a motion to,
Well, it's live and they're collecting fees from people already. Do you know how many it's
Yeah,
already
I
happened?
do not know how many we've had
Okay.
submit yet. I mean, I believe it was just last week that we put this out, maybe the week before.
So if you're gonna do
I
something.
know there's some discussion on Facebook, I did see that they were gonna surprise some people who probably wouldn't do it themselves, but the families wanted to honor them.
So I'd say if we're gonna do it, we have to do it today, because otherwise they'll have to do a lot of reimbursements.
I mean, our program, I don't know if this will help you out, our program was, we are purchasing from the banner company. We would just purchase based on the orders that we receive from them. So I don't know if that helps out your thought process on it.
Is there already funding appropriated for that initial purchase?
Yes.
Well, is it appropriated because?
Well,
they're-
yeah, we have to appropriate the money and then.
Essentially, the
because
people
money's on one
purchasing
side,
them
the-
are,
The expenditures on one side, revenues on the other.
Okay.
So we would have.
So we
to-
already did an appropriation for this
It's just part of our
general fund?
our general fund program.
Okay. And then you were doing money in, money out? Money in from whoever's paying for it, money out for when they turn around and pay the bill?
Yes, essentially.
Okay.
This is a long shot, Mr. Peoples, but the application said it's for those in the incorporated limit. Do we have any idea how many hometown heroes we might have? That's a big question.
No, I know it's rather popular with the VFW, even though some of the members of the VFW are not eligible for it. That's where it was kind of, the inception of the program was through them.
Because there's no limit as to where or when you served, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I would imagine there's a lot.
Yeah.
All right, we good on that item then?
well, I
It's-
guess,
yeah,
What's the cap?
What's the cap?
what do you want to go, 75, $5,000? 75, the first 75?
I concur.
Yeah.
And we can take, the bed tax can reimburse the general fund, correct? We can take,
Yeah,
Money out of-
I'm sorry, I'm getting a few updates on the program. We've already taken one payment. The VFW is on board with the program, did not seem concerned about the cost. And then we did model ours on Groveport, and Groveport charges $50, which is obviously a discount on the banner program.
So we'll just say whatever the price ends up being, it's not to exceed $49.60 or $5,000.
yeah. Yeah. So how do we need to do the legislation? I mean, if we wait, can we just do this tonight and approve it? Because if we wait, we don't have another meeting, and now you're into like July 17th before we could approve this, right? If we don't approve it tonight?
so what I'm hearing from Mr. Peoples is that funds are already appropriated, and it's more about the administrative determination that had been made to seek that the city be made whole on those purchases. So that being the case, there's no legislative action that would need to occur because that money can already legally be spent on these items. And then when we come back in July, if there's money that needs to be moved from one fund to another, then we can address that then.
Okay. So what, you'll just stop collecting the money on the first end, or send the money back now, the ones that have paid?
Yeah, we'll
and
figure out
then
if it's
later?
already been collected and deposited, we can
Okay.
figure out a refund.
Okay. Do you have any idea, like, what Groveport, how many Groveport had? or
I do not.
whatever? No?
Yeah, unless I get an update here. in the next minute or so.
Dude, I feel like we need Jeopardy
We've got some,
music.
we got some inquisitive ears in the audience out in the
I was gonna say.
hinterland.
Miss Woodruff is online, taking notes, and is providing me with some information. Very helpful.
Yes, she is.
All right, we good there then?
Yeah,
now? All
I
right.
think.
Mr. Walker, do you have anything else?
Just if you want to leave the speaker
Speakers?
system, yeah, the PA.
Okay.
type deal.
I actually have some information on that if you'd like.
Please.
So this is just one of the items, one of the companies, roughly to do the area between, on High Street between Columbus and Waterloo. We'd have to put up 5 units with some antennas, a computer has to go along with it, and a subscription. I'm not sure that this includes the computer, but we're looking about $12,000, $13,000 for the equipment. It does not look like it includes a computer, so we'll say just $15,000. And then a subscription would be a monthly charge for that, so for the streaming music subscription. So I don't have a program, I don't know of any other community that's doing this, so we want to take a look at it. I don't know if it's a door type thing, but it may be something that we could take a look at someone else's program just to see hours of operation, that type of thing. So if that's something, we do not have anything like this budgeted either, just a heads up.
Okay. So I did miss the total part that you, I apologize, 15,000?
15,000 for the equipment is what I'm, I'll say that's a rough figure at this point.
And did they have a cost for the monthly or yearly?
It was 35 a month on this particular site that we found.
And that was for how many speakers? total?
Five poles, it looks, we'll call it 5 units.
5 units. That would cover the Dora City area.
This is just the South High Street portion between Waterloo and Columbus Street.
Okay.
When you get outside of that gets into a lot more residential, that gets mixed in with the business district.
Okay.
So the door comes down to here, but we have, residential across the street.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we just leave that on there?
Yeah.
Any updates?
Any other old or new business this evening? All right, hearing none, I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Ms. Amick, second by Mrs. Amos. Roll call.
Mrs. Amick?
Yes.
Mrs. Amos?
Yes.
Mr. Busker?
Yes.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Milliken?
Yes.
Mr. Shea?
Yes.
Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Timeout 7:49.
No, no.
No, 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 no.
No, no.